All right, today is February 1, 2023. This is the meeting of the Container Storage Interface Community. As a reminder, this meeting is public, recorded, and posted on YouTube. Today, primary agenda appears to be a set of comments related to the volume group proposal from Xing. And I think Jan also has a controller unpublished. So let's start with the volume group stuff. First item related to volume group is from Ben. Cleanup responsibility when create fails. Ben, you want to introduce this?
Well, yeah. So I guess Xing and I had talked about the exact semantics of how we handle when one of these creations fails, and we had sort of reached an agreement that it's just the SP's responsibility. But then James also chimed in and said he wasn't really comfortable with that as an approach, and so I thought let's bring it to the whole group and talk it out. So as everyone knows, in CSI, whenever you create something, you give a name, you get back an ID when the create is successful, and then when you delete it, you pass in that ID to delete the object. The problem is, if you never get a successful create, you never get the ID and you can never call delete. And so that sort of forces us into this situation where it has to be the SP's responsibility to clean up after any failed creations. And it's especially complicated with these group snapshots because one can easily imagine a situation where, like, you take a snapshot of a group of 6 volumes, 5 of the snapshots come off just fine, but the 6th one fails. And so you don't have an actual group snapshot and you have to return an error back to the CO. But this, someone's going to eventually need to delete those 5 snapshots. And the question is who and when. And with the current design, the who has to be the SP, and the when we've kind of said, just after you return the error. And I don't know how comfortable people are with that semantic. The one alternative idea that I had come up with that we decided not to go with was we could change the definition of delete to accept either an ID or a name, the name being the same name that got passed into create, thereby allowing a CO to delete an object it didn't have an ID for. And if delete was implemented that way, then we could change the rules and restrictions around create and error handling. And so I want to consider this for group snapshots, and I want to mention that we could also change the implementation for regular snapshots and for volumes too, if we want to. But given that those are GA features, I'm not sure that anyone would even take advantage of the change if we were to implement it. So it may be a moot point for the existing GA features, but it's definitely not for group snapshots. So I'll be quiet and see if anyone else has any other ideas.
Hey Ben, just still about this idea. I think name alone is not enough to guarantee the uniqueness of the volume on the storage system, because you also have other input parameters. I think together, right? This whatever, when you say create, you have a name, and then you also give source volume IDs and parameters. This is for the group snapshot case. So all of those are the same, then you can guarantee that, or the storage system has to guarantee that it only create this one group snapshot. So
that's a good point, but I mean, we use name as an item potency guarantee, meaning that if
name
you were
is
to
not
send two different.
If you read the create volume carefully, it specifically mentioned other parameters. It's not, the name does not guarantee uniqueness on the storage system.
You're saying that if you could create 2 different volumes with the same name and different parameters and reasonably expect to end up with 2 different volumes with 2 different IDs.
Right, yeah, that is allowed if you read the spec on.
Yeah, no, I guess that doesn't surprise me. But we would never do that in Kubernetes. We always pass in a unique name. And so I guess from Kubernetes' perspective, the name sort of is the uniqueness guarantee, but I get your point. at the CSI spec, if we were to have a flavor of delete that accepted a name, it still wouldn't
Yeah, that's
necessarily
not
tell you
guaranteed.
which
Yeah, so
snapshot.
basically you have to say, so it's, I think it's the same thing when we're talking about idempotency for create volume. We talk about you give the name and also, you know, those other parameters. So delete will be the same if we say, hey, we also provide this other way of deletion without the ID, then we give the name and
Yes.
also the same parameter that we pass in when at delete time.
Well,
Yeah.
the only other approach that I think could possibly work here would be to make the API fundamentally asynchronous, so that when you called create, you immediately got back an ID before anything happened, and then you would have multiple phases it would go through, like you know that you have the snapshot cut phase and then the ready to use phase that would both happen after you got the ID. And that would make the API basically asynchronous.
But then that will be completely opposite of all the
Exactly. Well, yes,
right?
and that was James's complaint, is he doesn't want to make the API asynchronous.
Right.
So you know, much like the existing APIs that are synchronous, we should follow that model. But that seems to force us back onto the path of like, okay, if it's synchronous and you don't get the ID until it's successful, for those that are never successful, we have no choice but to basically say the SP must clean up after it returns the error.
Yeah. I mean,
What's wrong with that approach?
I think, well, did you read James's comment?
No, I
if
missed it.
how fast I can dig it up. His worry was that if the SP is cleaning up the failed snapshot, the CO may never find out that like it's in a failure loop, right? It could just keep trying.
But actually, I was wondering if that is actually addressed, because initially the comments didn't say you must return the error before cleanup. But then I think I changed that a little bit after his comment saying, hey, CO must return this error code, because his comment was saying, oh, this is async, meaning CO can the SP can clean up, and then the error will never be returned. Then the second call from CO will call that and then get a success. Then you will never get an error code. So if we change the writing to say CO SP must return an error code before cleanup, then maybe he's okay. So I haven't seen his reply after that, right? That's the thing. I was hoping he could join this call.
Yeah, his specific worry was that you could, because snapshots are sort of these things that exist at a point in time, you could try to take one, it could fail, the SP could clean up after the failure, and then you could retry and actually end up creating a new snapshot, and then that one could also fail, and then you could end up in this endless loop of creating and deleting snapshots, never succeeding, but the CO never understanding that like something is wrong, right? Because it just thinks it's in a retry loop.
And the other thing I was wondering, maybe he thought what we mean is some failure only from the post-processing, but what we mean in that sentence, actually, we're talking about the snapshot is cut, not really the post-processing. Maybe that's another difference. That's not quite clear when he first read the spec. So.
Yeah, I think I am personally comfortable with an implementation that says the SP must clean up after returning a non-terminal error to the CO, so that the CO has an opportunity to find out that the operation permanently failed, and then it does the cleanup. I think that's safe.
But sometimes it's not SP that returns the error. Sometimes it's the gRPC implementation. If containers are restarted or just simple timeout happens, then the SP doesn't know that the timeout happened on the
right. But would the CO
side.
give up under those circumstances?
Yeah.
Or would the CO retry?
Yeah, it will retry, but
I'm sorry, you said it will retry?
Yeah, it should retry, but is
so
expectation that it will continue in the same operation or start a new snapshot?
My understanding is that if you try to take a snapshot and you get 5 of them, but the 6th one fails, like that snapshot's dead, right? It's never going to succeed at this point. So all that needs to happen is for the CO to find out from the SP that this particular attempt to take a snapshot failed. And once this SP has communicated that back to the CO, it cleans up the garbage snapshots that are no longer needed. And then the CO could choose to initiate another attempt with a new name and begin the process over again. And maybe that succeeds, or maybe that also fails. But at least then the CO is in the driver's seat of deciding whether to start again. And you're not getting garbage.
In the case of the client side timing out, then the SP doesn't actually know that the CO, thinks it's failed.
Right, but if it's just a timeout, the CO is expected to retry until it gets an error code, like a permanent error code, right? A timeout error code indicates you should try again.
Okay, so in that case, if say a CO retried because of timeout, then when the SP gets the second request, it would probably say, oh, I already have either an operation, the same operation in progress, or I'm finished with this.
Well, in this particular case, it will say, I know about this snapshot because I tried to create it and it failed. And so it'll return back the error code.
Or it might have just taken a long time, right? In the case of timeout.
Right.
Well, I mean,
and
a timeout is just between the CO and the SP, right? That presumably the SP continues working even after the CO walks away. And so it is possible to have a timeout, and then when you retry, find out it's successful. But it's also possible to have a retry and find out that it failed.
Correct.
But yeah, I think if the CO does get a hold of the SP and the SP does get a chance to return back, like this snapshot was unsuccessful, then at that point you could just clean up. And then if for whatever reason the CO were to try again after that, like that's just a new request at that point, and you're starting a new snapshot. If it retries again, because it's not supposed to retry after a fatal error, right? If it wants to start a new snapshot, it should generate a new name and begin creating that new snapshot.
Yeah, I think option one seems like the most reasonable one. And with Xing's rewording, let's see if James has any further feedback. It sounds like folks on the call are in agreement.
Okay. And so we're also in agreement that we still like this general style of delete requiring an ID, and which means that in general, you have to have a successful create before you can call delete.
Yeah, that pattern seems to be effective from my end, so I'm okay with it.
Okay. Yeah, I can totally live with it because it's worked so far. I mean, it does cause these weird corner cases that you have to think harder about, but you think so far we've always been able to find an answer. So
yeah,
it's workable.
Cool. Good discussion. Thanks, folks. Let's move on to the next one, which is on the same PR, someone added a proposal for crash consistency level information. I'm going to pull that up here. So they are suggesting that CO may want to be able to require a minimum level of consistency for a group snapshot. Users may want to be able to discover the consistency of a snapshot group that was created. To address this use case, I propose adding a new field to create volume snapshot request, specifying the consistency level. And I think, Ben, you commented on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's absolutely true that, you know, at the application layer, you may want to take a snapshot that is more consistent than what, you know, just crash consistent. And somebody needs to know about the distinction and manage it. My basic response is like, that's all above CSI, right? Nothing CSI can do can quiesce your applications or quiesce your file systems necessarily. And so Like the only thing CSI can do is to give you that crash consistency. And if you want better consistency, like you got to implement that above CSI and therefore keep track of what your consistency level is above CSI. And it doesn't make sense to push that information down to CSI because there's nothing we can do with it. But that's my stance.
Yeah, I think that seems very reasonable. One comment I had was we should add something about consistency requirements to the spec.
Did you see the
have-
the exchange I had with Xing?
I did not.
Okay,
I
yeah,
think you just
I
look at
proposed
the
some new
latest.
wording.
Yeah, if you just look at the well, it is
It's been
go to
updated.
that
Okay.
PR
Sure. Yeah, let me pull that
or you
up.
can just read Ben's comment. Basically, I just reworded based on what he said there.
Yeah, I tried to use some more specific language to explain that, you know, what we're talking about is right order consistency across the volumes with respect to, you know, a stream of write traffic. All of the snapshots need to be taken at the same time. And I hope that that's explicit enough that everyone understands what it means. And we also changed the language from should to must, so that any application that wants to rely on this guarantee can actually rely on it.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, this is exactly what I was looking for. This looks good to me. So let me add a comment here. Okay. Any further discussion on consistency then? I think we're at conclusion here.
I just want to thank Xing for working so hard on this PR. This has been a really long one, and I think we're approaching 200 comments. We're approaching 300
1-star review.
So
Yeah,
thank you for all the hard work on this, Xing.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for driving this. I know it's not easy. I was talking to Ben about this yesterday, and I think the switch to making this specific to snapshot has made this much more tractable. So thank you for all your hard work on this.
Hey, thank you. Thanks everyone for reviewing.
Okay. So last item, yeah, actually anything else on the snapshot proposal? If not, we can move on to the next item.
I think we have covered the remaining issues. Just waiting for James to confirm.
Perfect. Okay, please feel free to poke me and Ben for final sign off, and we can help merge once James signs off.
Great, thanks.
Cool, thank you, Xing. Next is from Jan, controller unpublished without node unstage, node unpublish. Jan, you want to summarize this one?
Okay, so we have a long-standing issue when a node becomes broken, unavailable, or disconnected from network, and it has published volumes. There is no way how to unpublish those volumes because the node is unavailable. We can't call node unpublish, we can't call node unstage, but at the same time, we would like to call controller unpublish, so we can attach the volumes somewhere else and continue with the workloads. There has been an old proposal from Ben, I don't know, 2 years old probably. And quite recently, somebody posted a separate proposal that I linked, that we just allow control unpublished being called without node, unstaged node, unpublished, and that's it. Like we would not need no new states. We will just allow it in some conditions when CO is quite sure that nobody uses the volume. And James had some feedback that it breaks the spec, which is correct. It does break the spec, and it could surprise some SPs. However, both implementations, or at least both that I know of, implementations of CSI, that means Kubernetes and Nomad, they do something like that already. So the question is if we should move the standard where implementations are or do something better.
So Jan, did you see my comment on that that issue?
Yeah.
Up here. Yeah. So I intend to bring back my proposal and complete it. I think that the sticking point with that proposal was that people didn't understand what the CO would do. Like I only made this SP half of the, or sorry, the CSI half of the proposal, and I didn't explicitly write down like what a CO like Kubernetes should do. And I plan on doing that to try to satisfy those concerns and bring back the whole proposal. I still believe that we need the node cleanup portion of this, because you're correct that like if you have outside knowledge that like the node is definitely dead and that there's no need to do the node unstaged node unpublish, then it is safe to just do what like Kubernetes is currently doing and saying, yeah, we'll just controller unpublish it and you know, not worry about the node steps that we skipped over. But there are still plenty of real world situations where like you will want to be able to do the controller unpublish when you don't know whether the node is still using the volume or not. You know, all of those split brain scenarios where you can't access the node. It's possible the application is down, and if you have like high availability promises you want to maintain, like you really want to get the application moved to another node, and so you want to just controller unpublish and move it. But in the event that the node is actually still alive, like you need extra guarantees from the storage that it's not going to let that node corrupt your data. And then similarly, if the node rejoins the cluster and you find out that it hasn't died and it was just unreachable temporarily, and you've gone ahead and done the controller unpublish already, there is cleanup work to be done. And so, yeah, my proposal covers both of those cases, and I want to finally write a proper KEP and try to get that approved. And so I guess if I'm able to successfully move 477 forward, does that meet your concern? Or do you still think like we should just go ahead and do something quick and dirty?
I'm curious how I think you proposed the call, let's call fence or something like that.
What I propose is a new Boolean flag that you pass to controller unpublish. First of all, a capability that the SP asserts that says, I support this new flag. And then if the CO passes true for the new flag when it is controller unpublish, not only does it do the normal controller unpublish thing, but it also guarantees that the node can't access the volume.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
But what about the storage plugins that don't have that capability? And
then they would have
to.
They would have to continue doing sort of what we do today, where you rely on some external source of knowledge about the health of the node. And if you're confident that the node really is dead, you can go ahead and just call controller unpublish like we do today and basically break the rules. But you do that advisedly, that, you know, that if you do that and you were wrong about the node being dead, you're going to cause data corruption. So that's the risk that you take on when you just call controller unpublish. you know.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Even your PR requires kubely changes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Oh, so I mean, yeah, my PR just specifies the CSI spec changes necessary to implement a proper sort of force detach. And I'm going to write a KEP that outlines how Kubernetes would take advantage of this feature if we merged it in its current form.
Okay, yeah, I think James probably would be asking for that. I remember last
Yes.
time we were trying to incorporate that in the non-graceful node shutdown, but because he has a lot of concerns, so we dropped it.
Yes, yes. I talked to James offline about this specifically, and that was his ask, is I want to see how it's going to work at the Kubernetes layer.
Okay.
So I've agreed to produce a KEP that explains that, and then hopefully with that KEP convince people that this is something we should add to CSI.
We have a couple of customers waiting for this feature for quite some time. Is there anything we can help you to speed it up?
I guess when the KEP is written, help me get it reviewed. That'll be the main thing. I mean, the ideas are all in my head. I just have to get them onto paper. So I need to set aside some time and I guess start writing, and I'll circulate the KEP amongst this group once I have something.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, and then I guess assuming that the KEP satisfies everyone, help with implementation of the Kubernetes side changes would be very welcome.
So
Because
Ben, I wonder.
The CSI changes.
So I
was going to say. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, maybe you could add back that there was a safe detach thing for, in the non-graceful node shutdown in the earlier version of that. So maybe we still need that, but we can talk about it later. I know right now it's a little early.
Well, I don't remember this off the top of my head. Can you briefly describe it?
I think we were initially, there was like a safe detach flag will be added to the CSI API object. It's like the driver will say, this is safe to detach. We might still need that, but we can look at that. We can look at that one later.
I mean, with PR 477 on the CSI spec, I proposed two new capabilities, one controller capability and one node capability. And between them, they should communicate everything that the CO needs to know about how to use the feature. Adding another Boolean to the CSI driver object would be redundant with those capabilities, I think.
Yeah, we can take a look. I don't remember the details. I remember that time we were trying to do something there in the KEP at one point, but we'll see if that makes sense or not.
I mean, I guess I could imagine a sort of a quick and dirty fix that, yeah, where we basically had a flag on the CSI driver object that said, for my driver, I promise that every time you call controller on publish, that I actually prevent that node from accessing that volume. And then Kubernetes could rely on that guarantee. But that's only half the problem that needs to be solved to actually get like high availability pods, because you still have the problem of, cleaning up the node when you pull the trigger on this sort of force detach. And I wanted to have that problem solved inside the CSI spec and not just force everyone to go around rebooting their nodes. Because rebooting is sort of a heavy hammer to solve the problem with.
Yeah, no, not rebooting. I think the safe detach originally in that KEP does not require a rebooting. I think rebooting is another thing, a lot of it was brought up by, I think James is one, and then I think Haman also mentioned that rebooting is required for some systems. That was one. I remember that was one thing, one concern they have, like rebooting is absolutely required. That's what they say.
Well, but that's an implementation flaw in specific storage systems, right? If they're not able to clean up after like a failure, like they should make their code better.
I think this is for, I believe, the AWS. I remember that was what Haman said. AWS requires this.
If you force detach a volume from AWS, they suggest you to reboot.
Oh yeah, I think something like
And
that.
we have seen cases when it was really necessary.
Mhm.
Maybe they fixed it because it was a long time ago.
The underlying issue is, of course, that there's write caches at various layers, and if they contain any dirty buffers and you force detach them, like you really want to make sure that all those write buffers get flushed before anyone starts writing from that node again. And the problem is there could be write buffers at many layers. You need them all to be flushed to be safe. So yeah, you would want to leave open the possibility that some implementations just can't provide the guarantee that they can flush all their write buffers, and therefore the only safe thing to do is to reboot the node. But this particular spec proposal allows for that. You know, you could just implement one of the capabilities, but not the other. And then Kubernetes could cope with that by doing half the job, but then saying you can't let the node back in until it's been rebooted. So I will set aside time to write a KEP soon. I'm sorry, I can't promise an exact date. I've been pretty busy, but I am committed to making that happen.
Cool. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Jan, for surfacing this. Any other discussions related to this topic? Okay. Any other topics to discuss today? All right. Well, thank you everyone for your time and the good discussions. We'll take it back to the PRs in progress and review there. I will see you all in a month. Take care.
All right, thank you.
Bye.